Hey, what's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. Today on this video, we need to talk about the fall shad migration, which is also the fall bass migration that is actually starting right now. I know this because I was just out on Watts Bar yesterday, as well as Chick a few days ago, and the shad are definitely moving into the backs of the creeks. In fact, there's many creeks where there is just a ton of shad already in the backs of them. So most people tend to think about that fall shad migration happening in like October, or even real late in September or something like that. But I'm here to tell you that it will happen early in September, and you don't want to miss that bite. I think a lot of people get hung up on the temperatures that they're still feeling. I mean, right now it's beautiful. The last week has been really nice with like highs in the high 70s, and the nights are a little bit cooler. So it kind of feels like you definitely feel a change happening. But for a lot of September, it's still pretty hot. And so you feel like it's still in the dog days of summer. But if you start to look around, you start to notice that some of the trees are starting to change color, like just slightly. They're not like, you're not seeing the reds and yellows and oranges. You're just seeing a little hint of maybe a little orange or yellow or something like that on some of these trees. So it's definitely starting, but you have to really be looking for it. So anyways, this is something that a couple years ago, fishing the Bassmaster Open on Watts Bar, I realized that everybody was still focused on the main lake, and I found a really, really good pattern, a good bite fishing the backs of creeks, focusing on the shad migration, and nobody else was back there. So I know that people overlook this. So anyways, what I wanted to do today is talk about some of the things that you need to look out for when you're fishing right now. If you're tired of that slow bite that we've had in the dog days of the summer, late July, August, and you want to get onto a bite where you can start throwing reaction baits and start covering water and things like that, fishing shallow, kicking up mud. This is going to be a good video to kind of pay attention to. So the very first thing, I guess I should kind of rewind a little bit and talk a little bit about what the shad migration is. So essentially, not a biologist. So this is just from the perspective of somebody that has just a ton of experience on the water, but not a lot of book learnings. Essentially what happens every single year is with shad, a shad are a migratory fish. They, prey species. They school up in these big giant schools, and generally during the fall or during the summer, a lot of them are on the main lake. That's where the food source is. That's where they like to be. But as things start to cool down and also the days start getting shorter, they tend to make a shift to the backs of feeder creeks. So, creeks that actually have, especially when it rains, a good inflow of fresh water. And that tends to be the habitat that they prefer that time of year, whether it's food or temperature or air or oxygen saturation. I'm not 100% sure on all the details of what brings them to the backs of the creeks, but that's what they do. They move back there, and they'll be there through November until the temperatures really plummet. And catching this wave early is really important. So the first thing that I do this time of year is I will make, if you have your electronics set up properly, you have the right type of transducer placement on the back of your boat, you can run on plane and see the bottom, but also see where the bait is in a creek. Okay, like yesterday we were running along, and I actually told the guy that I was with, I said, hey, listen, you see how here on the main lake, very little, schools of shad on the main river here. Wait until we start getting into one of these creeks, and I'll show you all these little patches of big schools of shad. And sure enough, as soon as we got into a creek, we're running along and it just lit up, you know, just tons of bait. So I like to run into these creeks and kind of see where the bait starts and where it starts to taper off, if it starts to taper off. Usually, you know, like yesterday, we as soon as we got into where it narrows into a creek type of area, it was just loaded with shad from there all the way to the back. You know, the back, you weren't, you know, idling and seeing them, but you were seeing them just visually, you know, flicking on the surface and stuff like that, way back in these dirt shallow creeks. So yesterday it was pretty uniformly spread out, but sometimes you'll have certain zones of a creek that have the bass or have the bait fish, and the bass are in those zones as well. So the first thing I'm going to do is run into a creek, run towards the back of a creek, and just note on my 2D sonar where the highest concentration of those shad schools are. If it's pretty uniform throughout, then I just kind of fish the region that has the most you know, familiar cover, or the type of cover that I like to fish, and all that. I really generally, and this is something we talked about yesterday, I generally prefer to fish shallower. That's just me. But if you fish in the back of a creek, you know, that's really, really shallow, you tend to have less areas for those bass to go. So every little object, little stick up, you know, just a little branch is sticking out in the middle of nowhere, every little thing is going to be a higher percentage opportunity for you. You know, if you're out towards the mouth of a creek and you got steep sides, steep contours, the fish could be way out deep, maybe around the creek channel, or they could be, you know, anywhere in between. You know, the more depth you have, the more opportunity that those fish have to just be all over the place. But if you go into the backs of a creek, there's very few options for them. You know, they've only got this much water, you know, and so whatever objects are around, that's where the fish are going to gravitate towards. So I tend to like to go way back in the creeks and then work my way out. But some certain things that are really, really important to pay attention to, you know, when you are fishing in a creek, whether it's usually this is more important in the backs of the creeks where it's shallower, but finding a good channel swing. So let's kind of use the whiteboard here. We'll use blue. So this is the creek, say. All right, main river channel is here. Then you've got, you know, an offshoot. Waves through here, it kind of comes in and then comes back here. So this is like the creek channel, right? So the creek comes in here, it swings towards this side and then swings towards this side real close and all that. So this is like the original little creek channel. All right, so channel swings are going to be the keys that I focus on. Okay, but more so back here in the creek. So this is going to be shallower water in general. Like this side, you may not even be able to get a trolling motor in some areas. Yesterday, I was having a real hard time. I actually had to pull out the push pole to get out of a spot that was the opposite bank of the channel swing, so the flat side of the creek. But channel swing sides, that's where most of the fish are going to be. And a lot of times the channel swing is only like 2 or 3 foot. Versus like dirt, shallow over here. So channel swing banks, that's where most of the shad are going to congregate. They don't want to like be out here on like half foot of water, or you know, a foot of water or something like that. Generally, there will be a lot of shad here, but they're more susceptible. You know, they feel. I think that they feel that they're more exposed on something like this. But the creek channel just makes them feel more safe. There's more depth there. They have more options. And so they generally tend to be in that channel. But by doing that, by focusing on the creek channel itself, and that's also where the influx of nutrients is coming from, that is their food source. You know, by being in the creek channel, they're actually condensing themselves, and the bass, it's a lot easier for the bass to ambush the prey. So that's why creek channel bends are really important. But I think that this bend right here is way more important than this bend right here. But both of them at different times can play a big role. So I'm not saying like ignore this one. I'm just saying that usually the back of the creek, the most shallow channel swing banks, those tend to be the best. So anyways, channel swings, really, really super important. Like I said before, this is just a note and just kind of reiterating, you know, I like to generally in the fall start in the backs of the creeks and then work my way out. But that's more consistent with my style of shallow water power fishing. So just keep that in mind. All right, so another really important thing, and this may seem obvious to some people, but it may be kind of like an, oh yeah, that totally makes sense moment for other anglers. This is the time of year to use shad imitations. So because we're focusing on the shad migration, the bass are focusing on the shad migration, you want to use shad imitations. And not only do you want to use shad imitations, you want to use shad imitations, because we just got done with the time period where we had to drag a worm, you know, for the last month and a half. Now you get the opportunity to wing a swim jig or a chatterbait or a buzzbait or a variety of different, you know, shad imitations at these fish, cover water, have fun, get some top water blowups, all that stuff. It's gonna be a lot more fun. But you need to start using those shad imitation baits. So even though, you know, you may be like love throwing like worms and stuff like that, you're gonna catch some fish, but you're going to have a lot more opportunities if you imitate the bait fish that you're seeing, and that's a really important thing. This is the time of year that fish really start getting hyper focused on the size, color, and profile of those shad that you're seeing. So you have to go up to one of those schools of shad, and if you can find one that's like distressed or dead on the surface or something like that, that's a great opportunity for you to see, all right, this one's 3 inches. It's got this little bit of yellow on it and things like that. You know, you don't have to get like super specific, especially if it's stain water, which most of this fishing is. But definitely try to get as close to the size and profile of the shad that you're seeing in the backs of the creek. Some lakes, the shad are like much bigger. And then other lakes, they're really, really tiny shad, threadfin shad. So just try to be as close to that as possible and match whatever bait that you're using to that. That's going to help you. All right. All right, so this is a good one to talk about. So let's use a different color. Where did I put the red? I just had a red pen. Anyways, all right, so there are different types of structures on the lake that you're going to see that are really, really good for this shad migration and for to allow fish to you know, post up on these type of structures and feed on the shad as they're coming through a creek. So the shad are going to be coming, you know, from the main lake, coming through and moving to the back. Like that's where they're going, is to the back of this creek. All right. So what you want to look for, if you're looking for more structure-oriented opportunities, you know, maybe throwing a deep diving crankbait, throwing a Carolina rig, or whatever that may look like, a spoon. If you're looking for like big schools of fish using your electronics and things like that, you want to find structure that is intercepting, you know, interjecting its way into those migration routes that the shad are using. So for instance, something like this. All right, so you see how you have this creek channel, it comes, swings in, makes a sharp turn towards this bank. All right, so a lot of times you're going to see structures that are long tapering structures, so they look like this. You know, they might have some weird little bumps and stuff, and then they come to a point like this. All right, so you might have this big, long, you know, shallow point that comes out. Maybe it's a little bit higher right here. You know, maybe there's a high spot right here, and then it tapers out into the river channel. Maybe there's a little bit of a shallow point right there, and then you have a saddle in between. All right, so this is slightly deeper water, maybe like 5 feet. This is like 2 or 3 feet right here, 2 or 3 feet right here, and then it tapers into deeper water here, here, here. You know, you get it. This right here is the type of structure I really like to look for, you know, because it is essentially either, you know, this is the route that the shad are going. This is right in their way, which is a great opportunity for bass to set up on a structure like this and feed on the shad, ambush them, corral them into that shallow structure, condense them into a smaller, you know, part of the water column, and feed on them right there. So I look for these type of structures right here. Sometimes they're obvious, sometimes they're less obvious. Really the key is to you know, if it's real shallow, you got to fish it. You know, you're not going to idle it and you know, expect to catch them that way. Usually you're going to just fish this type of structure. But if you have one that's like in deeper water, like 10 foot or something like that, you know, idle it and see what it looks like. Maybe there's a like a hard spot or something like that. See if you could see a school of fish on it. But very often bass will use these type of interjecting structures that are kind of a barrier, you know, in the way of this migration as really, really good ambush points. So those are type of things that you really want to look for. We actually, not all of them are going to produce, right? So it's not like if you find one of those, you're just magically going to start catching fish. There's going to be times where it looks perfect. It looks like it's the perfect interjecting, you know, structure, and then there's nothing there. There's going to be some that just end up producing. Like I found one yesterday that was a little bit more subtle. It was a little bit deeper water, and bass were all over it. So it's just something that you have to go experiment. But that's the type of structure I like to use. It's going to be long tapering points, humps, hard spots, shell beds, and stuff that is in this path, you know, going from the main lake to the back of the creek. Okay. All right, so another thing, and I know this is going to be a long video, so thank you guys for sticking with me. Hopefully it's helpful. The next thing is going to be funnel areas. So funnel areas, really, really important. So what we're going to do here is we're going to erase this. So assume you take the same creek, and instead of having just an open path back here, you have, and we'll use blue for this because we got 2 colors here. Instead, you've got a bridge right here, like a causeway. All right, and so you have the bridge right here. So the channel's right here. This is all riprap on either side. This is all riprap. This is the one route that those fish can take. That's the one place that they can go, you know, to get back here. That is a perfect funnel type of area. They have to get through that bridge to, you know, to get back here. That is the type of area that you really have your best opportunity to catch a lot of fish during a migration time period, like the spring migration and the fall migration. Guntersville is a perfect example. Guntersville is absolutely full of these type of scenarios, and many, many tournaments over the decades have been won using these funnels. Okay, you know, you've caught, the countless fish have been caught underneath these little causeways and bridges on Lake Guntersville and other lakes too. But this is really great because the shad won't like just magically find the opening here. They'll usually like come around and you know, they'll just kind of meander around the edges, you know, around the sides of the riprap and the causeway here, and then they'll make their way through that. And so you can catch fish on the riprap, you know, throwing like lipless crankbaits and spinnerbaits and chatterbaits and things like that. And then you can also catch them in this little funnel point. But this is going to condense everything for you, and the bass use it as an ambush point, and you can use it as an ambush point for the bass. So you know, using funnels to your disposal is really important, and it could be an unnatural man-made funnel like this, or it could be a natural funnel. You know, another funnel would be, you know, example that's lesser, you know, discussed is like a saddle. You know, having a relatively deeper spot between two, you know, very shallow contours is a really, really good opportunity to you know, funnel bait fish into a smaller area. So you can actually, you know, use these as funnels too. The bass use them as funnels to condense everything. So anyways, look for those funnel areas, those pinch point areas. This would also be considered a funnel. It's not as dramatic of a funnel as this, where there's only, like, literally you cannot swim anywhere but the bridge, but this culvert. But here this is where a lot of things are funneling too. So like the tip of this point may be like a really good ambush point too, because this is a natural funnel here where that creek channel is coming through. So anyways, excuse my terrible illustrations on this. Hopefully it makes sense, but this is just kind of some of the detail things that I look at during the fall. When I'm going into an area, I'm processing it in this manner to figure out maybe where, you know, the hot spots are. But anyways, I'm going to stop rambling on and on. I know that the whiteboard, usually we get on, we get in the weeds on the whiteboard, but hopefully this is a helpful video. If you guys have any questions at all, let me know in the comment section below. Other than that, I'm going to see you guys out on the water. Make sure you trust the process.